Westmoreland Community Connections is a presentation of the Westmoreland Drug and Alcohol Commission.
Welcome to Westmoreland Community Connections, a look at issues and happenings on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. Here now is your host, Chad Amond, President and CEO of the Westmoreland County Chamber of Commerce.
Hello and welcome to Westmoreland Community Connections on WHJB Classic Hits 107.1. I'm your host, Chad Amond, President and CEO of the Westmoreland County Chamber of Commerce. Today we are delighted to have with us Chris Douglas. He is the CEO of the Westmoreland County Food Bank, and Jennifer Miller, Director of Development with the Westmoreland County Food Bank. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Westmoreland Community Connections.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Chris, it's great to have you on the show. Jennifer, it's great to have you on the show as well. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to the food bank.
I've actually been in food banking for 20 years now. I started out at the Fayette County Community Action Food Bank in Uniontown, and actually in human services. I don't want to age myself too much, but I've been in the business since 1989. So I found my life's work at the food bank in Fayette County in 1997. And one of the things that I always wanted to do was work with a Feeding America food bank. And just so happened that a position opened up at the Westmoreland County Food Bank, and I took over the position of Director of Development. And it's been 12 years, and it's been a great ride. What I do there is I am in charge of cultivating grants, fundraising, legislative advocacy, and whatever else Chris tells me to do.
So Chris, how did you get into the world of food bank?
Well, originally I was a branch manager for First National Bank here in the area, and at the time the Westmoreland County Food Bank was looking for board members, and obviously in banking they always want you to be involved in the community and get out there and get your name out in the community. So I joined the board of directors. I was on it about 3 years before our previous CEO decided that she wanted to retire. She had been there 12 years and gave us a year's notice. So at first, I didn't think too much about it, but then a little light bulb went on, and I said I could really see myself doing this job. It's a great cause, it's a great mission, and I get much more out of it than in working with in the financial world, being able to work with as part of a team that helps make an impact in the community in Westmoreland County. And so this is my fifth year. I went through the application process just with 65 other applicants, and obviously, being on the board, they knew me, but right. At the end of the day, I went through the process just like everybody else. So 5 years in now, and it's the best thing I ever did.
Wow! So you went from banking to banking, right?
Yeah, finance to food.
Well, tell the listeners just to give them a summary of what is the mission of the food bank. I mean, I think that everyone, they're driving in their car, they're sitting around the breakfast table today, or listening to the show. They're like, oh yeah, right. I mean, I pretty much know what the food bank does, but I don't know that the listeners really do know the details of what the food bank does, and so we're going to get into a little bit of that. But give us the high profile mission of what you do.
The mission of the food bank is to enable all Westmoreland County residents who are hungry or at risk of hunger to have ready access to food. We've been around since 1982. Originally, we were part of the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank, but in 2000, sought out and received affiliate status with Feeding America. And so now we are independent. We service just Westmoreland County. Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank in some way, shape, or form services the 11 counties that surround us. And we did that for a couple of reasons. Obviously, it allows us to go after bigger grants when we're not under Greater Pittsburgh's umbrella and, attain more food through Feeding America, through foundations and stuff of that nature. So we allows us to take better care of the residents of Westmoreland County.
Well, when you say that to feed the folks that are undernourished in Westmoreland County, we have a population of 350,000 people in this county. Give me an approximate number of how many people. Is it a percentage? Is it how do you determine how many people are not fed?
Okay, so in the United States today, roughly 46 million Americans are food insecure. That's in the previous 12 months, not knowing where their next meal's coming from, or experiencing a time where they didn't have enough money to purchase 3 square meals a day for their family. In the state of Pennsylvania, we have 12 million residents, roughly 1 in 6, 2 million are food insecure. And in Westmoreland County, it's a little bit better. It's about 1 in 7, 1 in 8. But right now, we're servicing about 16,500 people each month. In a given year, about 31,000 individuals. That's people coming on and off of our programs. So, I mean, obviously, it's a large.
So 31,000 in countywide.
Yeah, and there are more that qualify for our services but are not receiving them. And we have programs in place to address reaching out to those individuals. But two of the biggest things we run up against are pride and ignorance. Pride. Some people, no matter how hungry they are, they're too proud to take the services. Or a lot of times it's ignorance, meaning they don't know how to go about signing up for services. They don't know if they qualify. They don't even know, if the food bank, exactly what they do. Mm-hmm. I'm a lifelong Westmoreland County resident, and growing up in Westmoreland County, never needing the services, knock on wood, of the food bank, I didn't know that much about the food bank. Right. So it's, that's part of Jen and I's job, is to get the word out in the community, what we do and how to sign up for services. We're here to, to support the people in need.
Well, Jennifer, tell me a little bit about how does a food bank work?
Well, the food bank works. It's very unique. We rely on several different funding avenues to support what we do. And one of the biggest ones is the State Food Purchase Program. And it's a part of the agricultural budget. That's the major line item in the agricultural budget. And we are one of the first states in the union to actually have such a program. Legislators back in, I think it was in 82, decided that we needed to have a straight line item to help support the emergency food assistance program that we get food from the USDA. Since that time, it's kind of reversed. The State Food Purchase Program used to give us money to purchase food to complement the items that we were getting from the USDA. Now it's more like the USDA product is complementing the items that we're getting from the State Food Purchase Program. So it's very difficult to kind of comprehend how we do that. But in other words, the State Food Purchase Program, we purchase the food at wholesale prices or better. We're not permitted to purchase pop candy or gum.
Okay. Do you purchase directly from a supermarket? Like, do you purchase from Giant Eagle, or do you purchase from the manufacturers?
We purchase from manufacturers or vendors. Okay. It's the I can't think of the word, wholesale ordering. And we're able to do that very easily, because where we're unique in the food bank land is that we do a system called the push system of distribution. And every food pantry across the county gets the same food that if you give out at the beginning of the month and Kris gives out at the end of the month, you both get the same type of product.
I see.
So we do it that way. Other food banks do it as a coordinator choice or client choice, where they actually pick the foods that they want off of the inventory. And we don't charge for food to our food pantries. We only charge for transportation fees, which is about $100 a month or $50 if they split a truck with another food pantry, whereas other food banks charge per pound. We're not comfortable doing that, so therefore we're able to give out so much more food than what other food banks do.
So if my family needed to use the food bank, we don't need to go to your location in Delmont.
Right.
We would go to a food pantry. Obviously, you work with food pantries around the county. How does that work?
Well, either if you're qualified, you contact the food bank, and they would go through a screening process to figure out whether or not you're income eligible. You have to be at 150% of the poverty level or lower. From there, they would determine what pantry would be best for you. As somebody who might be working, they may not be able to go to one that's closest to their home, but one that would be more convenient to their work schedule. So we have 43 food pantries throughout Westmoreland County. So there's one in every corner of the county. So we're able to really accommodate people's schedules and their needs. So then we would refer them out to the food pantry. They would go on the designated day, get signed up and ready to go, and they can go there on a monthly basis as long as they need it.
Now, are those food pantries all connected with a church or a synagogue or a school? How does that work?
It could be. It could be a church. Most of them are from faith-based organizations, but we do also work with organizations such as Christian Layman, Westmoreland Community Action, Salvation Armies, and so on. So it just depends on who wants to be involved and who wants to minister to their community in that manner.
You're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. We're talking with Kris Douglas, CEO of the Westmoreland County Food Bank, and Jennifer Miller, Director of Development for the Westmoreland County Food Bank. Kris, tell me a little bit. Whenever I would think about a food bank when I was a kid, I thought about, they would do the drives where you take the cans of food, and obviously with what you were saying earlier with the purchasing through the state and the USDA, it's a lot more complicated than that. But do you still take food donations?
Absolutely, and honestly, it takes many different revenue streams and many different avenues of donations to make what we do possible. The two largest food drives we have are the Postal Service U.S. Letter Carriers Drive, and that has actually grown substantially. This year, we received over almost 100,000 pounds of food. That's people leaving their food in bags out by their mailbox for their mailman to pick up and bring to.
So that's through the Postal Service, because I know that at our door we get some from the Boy Scouts as well.
Is the second largest.
Okay.
So the Boy Scouts scouting for food. We get roughly 35 to 40,000 pounds of food each year from that as well, which is great. And a lot of times we'll get asked the question, what is it better to get donations of non-perishables or better to get dollars? And quite frankly, we take everything. We don't want to discourage anything because everything is important and help us fulfilling our mission. But because of the immense buying power we have and the fact that we can get things at little or no cost, or just cost of transportation or cost of storage, every dollar that we receive, we can turn into roughly $10 of retail value food. So, I mean, that's pretty good buying power, and it lets us really stretch the dollars that we receive to maximize, how much service we can give to Westmoreland County residents.
But I would think that there's probably a value of raising awareness when you do the food collection, the Boy Scouts or the Postal Service, to make sure that residents, what did you say, the pride and ignorance, there's probably ignorance on the donation side as well, correct?
Right. And we do a lot of things in the community that to help to try to raise awareness. One of the big ones we got going on right now, which I'll let Jennifer talk about, is our Turkey Cup Challenge. It's there's 17 school districts in Westmoreland County, and our goal was to try to engage younger people at an earlier age to help them understand the issue of food insecurity. Again, if you're like me, I was lucky enough to grow up in a household that did not need the services of the food bank. But for so many out there, we never know when we're walking down the streets who that 1 in 6 or 1 in 7 person is that may be struggling with food insecurity at home. And a lot of times, one of the two demographics that really bother me the worst are young children. When you go to a food distribution, you see a family in line, regardless of what the parent situation is, it's not the fault of the children. So you have to think about what their home life must be like, or do they have anything to eat when they go home after school each day? And then also the senior citizens. We see people with I served in Korea or Vietnam hats on or whatever the case may be, and that they put their life on the line for their country, and now they have to make a choice between paying for prescription drugs or paying for food. That's a terrible choice to have to make when you have a senior that's cutting his prescription pills in half because he's trying to make them stretch farther.
Yeah, right, right.
So, but one of the things that we do, and to help raise awareness in the community, as I mentioned, the Turkey Cup Challenge. I'll let Jen kind of mention that.
This is our 12th year with the Turkey Cup Challenge, and it wasn't an original idea. It was actually started in Boston, and basically it's challenging the schools to raise funds to help feed their community. So we have, I think, 7 schools participating this year, and overall, in the 12 years that the program has been in existence, they've helped to raise over $300,000 for the food bank. Oh, wow. So they can raise the money however they want to. They could do turkey trots, they could do penny wars, they could do dress down days, whatever works for them.
What's a penny war?
Penny wars mean collect your pennies and bring them in, and
okay.
then whatever room or whatever homeroom or whatever class collects the most, then they actually win for their school. But whichever school raises the most money actually gets a trophy that has a turkey on top.
Oh, nice.
And it's kind of like the Stanley Cup. and each year we put the winner and how much they raised on the trophy, and then they get to hold it for a year. So, and then of course the winning school actually gets a physical trophy that they get to keep forever.
And that's the whole school district,
it's the whole. It's just individual schools. We've actually had the Dairy School District actually did one year. The whole district participated. I think that's only 3 or 4 schools, but it was still really cool to have a whole school district participate. But we've had only 2 winners really in the 12 years. Yawk Intermediate Middle School out towards Ruffsdale, and then now Heritage Elementary in the Murraysville area has actually stepped up to the plate. And Yawk Intermediate Middle School will probably go over $100,000 raised in 12 years for us this year. So they only have a small amount to go.
You're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB and on the web at WHJB.fm.com. We will be right back after these messages.
This is Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. If you have a suggestion for a topic, or if your nonprofit organization would like to be featured on this program, call us during regular business hours at 724-216-1200.
Westmoreland Community Connections is a presentation of the Westmoreland Drug and Alcohol Commission.
Welcome back. You're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. I'm your host, Chad Amond, President and CEO of the Westmoreland County Chamber of Commerce. Today we're talking with the Westmoreland County Food Bank. Chris Douglas is the CEO, and Jennifer Miller is the Director of Development with the Food Bank. Before we went to the break, we were talking a little bit about one of the programs that the Food Bank does across the county, the Turkey Cup Challenge. 7 school districts over the last decade have raised about $300,000 for food bank work. That number is accurate, right? Is $300,000.
Yes.
So donations and fundraising are obviously critical to the food bank, to meeting your mission. Talk a little bit about some of the other programs that you facilitate, Jennifer, for fundraising.
Well, we have a very robust direct mail program. Probably everybody listening today has received a mailer from us, and that is one of the main. That is the main fundraising event that we have, is our direct mail program. We do about 9 to 10 mailings a year, and we raise close to $2 million, and that is from a very, very generous community. Our mailers
$2 million just from the
community
postcard,
donations.
the mail
Yes,
stuff. Okay.
Yes, and contrary to popular belief, it is not that expensive for us to do that. It probably costs around between 46 and 50 cents each in order to send those out to our community.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's very, very good.
Well, so Chris, tell me, how much does it cost to run a food bank in Westmoreland County? I mean, you're obviously generating $2 million from community gifts, but there's obviously grants and fundraising events and things like that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, in the last, let's say since 2000, we used to be a large percentage of our funding came from either the state or the federal government or the local government. But as time has moved on and as things have got, there's been cuts or level funding to our programs, we've become to, rely more and more on individual donations and foundations and corporations to make up the difference. And to give you an idea how much things have changed, in 2000, about 10% of our budget came from fundraising. Today, it's over 60%.
Oh, wow.
So that's a big difference. Our current budget's around is around $3.6 million. And obviously, we get a ton of food donated to us, but there's a lot of food that we do have to go out and purchase. So things like the monies that we still receive from the state food purchase program, and what we get from the federal government, and what we get from Westmoreland County are vitally important to helping us fill that gap each year. But the generous donations that we get from the community are what really make the difference. I mean, if it wasn't for that increase in what we get from direct mail, we could never serve as many people as we do in the county.
Right.
And so because of that, we're very conscious of the fact that we have to be good stewards with the dollars that we receive. And just as in years past, I'm very happy to report that roughly 95 cents of every dollar we take in goes back out the door to help those in need. So only 5% admin and overhead, which is really good, from a donor standpoint, to know that the dollars that they're donating are going for what they were intended, and that's helping take care of people in need.
And it sounds like more than half of the total funding is coming from the community. the people on the street that are on the front line in the community.
In Westmoreland County, we have roughly 50,000 people in our donor base that have given at some point, in the past. Not necessarily every year they're giving, but they're giving, when they can. And every dollar counts, no matter how big or how big a donation or how small a donation. Somebody sending in $5 every now and then. Again, $5 is $50 of retail value food that we can purchase. So every dollar counts. And, as time has progressed, we've developed great working relationships with many of the large foundations, not only in Westmoreland County, but in the Pittsburgh, region. And we're very thankful for the support that they give us to help us, fulfill the needs that we have in this county. Without their support, we couldn't, have the fleet of trucks that we have or have the facility that we have in Delmont. So we're obviously very grateful for that as well.
So you said that you obviously have some overhead and you obviously have staff. How many people do you have on staff?
Well, right now we're 22 full-time people, and this year we're on track to distribute almost 9 million pounds of food.
Wow!
So obviously that brings us probably next into the next great topic is volunteers.
That's
There's two things that we're very, very proud of.
You stole my thunder. I was gonna say 22 people cannot do all of the work that you do.
Right.
So you obviously have to have volunteers. And how many volunteers do you have? How do you get those folks to jump on board?
Right. So we have last year roughly 6,300 volunteers donated about 96,000 hours of time, either at our facility in Delmont or one of the food pantries. We have 43 as Jen mentioned, 43 food pantries in the community. There's also 17 on-site feeding programs as well. So either at volunteering either at our facility or at one of those pantries. And so that's the equivalent of having like an additional 40-some full-time staff, roughly $2 million of salary that we couldn't afford, obviously, to plug into our budget. So volunteers are just as important as the dollars that we receive a lot of the times, sometimes even more so, because, again, 22 people can't distribute 9 million pounds of food.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess from a layman's perspective, I would assume that this would be a very busy time of year for you, right? I mean, we're getting on to Thanksgiving. It's fall. I typically, put on a couple of pounds this time of year, but the reality of it is that, people that are hungry don't stop being hungry on New Year's Day, right? When you get to the next year. So how do you manage this time of year versus, February, when people maybe aren't just thinking about the food bank and people being hungry?
If you look at in a given year, the level of individuals coming on and off the programs, this time of year obviously you see a spike. In the summertime when things you don't have to turn the thermostat on, or there's other expenses aren't quite as high. People don't come to as much for services. But as soon as the temperatures start to drop, like they have this past week, you start to see more people coming to us for services because they have to turn their heat on. Okay, so that's just one little thing can make the difference between them making getting through the month and having to come to us for services. So this time of year, we do see more people coming to the food bank for services. This is also our very busy fundraising time of the year. This is the time of year, because of the holidays, that people feel the most generous. And that's great. And we're very, very appreciative of all the donations that we receive. But I do, as you mentioned, like to remind people that hunger doesn't disappear January 1. It is still prevalent. It's still there, especially in the cold months of January, February, and March, when people are really, having to keep the thermostat up.
Right.
That's one of the roughest times of the year for a lot of individuals. So that's one of the things I like to remind people is that it doesn't go away with the holiday season. It's still there at the beginning of the new year.
You're listening to Westmoreland Community Connections on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB. We're talking with the CEO of the Westmoreland County Food Bank, Kris Douglas, and we're also talking with Jennifer Miller, Director of Development for the Food Bank. Jennifer, there's a program that I'm somewhat aware of. It's the backpack program, and having 4 kids in school right now, this is one that just pings at my heart, because the kids that are going home on the weekends that don't have anything to eat, it just makes my heart bleed for them. So tell me and the listeners a little bit about the backpack program.
The The Weekend Backpack Program is such an amazing program, and we wish that we had enough funding to go around to every single school that needed it in Westmoreland County. We started it back up in 2015. It was a program that we had prior to that, and because of the overhead costs and what it took to do the program, we had to let it go. What we found was that we were working with a food bank in Middle Tennessee with their Project Preserve program, that we're able to actually purchase the product to go out to the schools, that it's already packaged, labeled appropriately, because they're a Feeding America food bank too, so they know the rules and regulations that we have to follow. So it made it much more cost effective, both in overhead and cost of food. So we brought it back to, we started out with 3 schools. We were at Ramsey Elementary in Mount Pleasant, Derry Elementary, of course, in the Derry School District, and the Monessen Elementary School in Monessen. So what we had found was, just from those 3 schools, was it was reported through staff surveys and children's surveys and parent surveys that the attendance for those who are participating in the program went from 60% on Fridays to 100%.
Oh, wow.
We also found that quizzes or tests that were given on Mondays and Tuesdays went from very low scores to much better, either average or high scores. And it was because they were eating over the weekends. So whereas that's a harsh reality, it is a good thing that we're making that difference. Since then, we've been able to add on 2 more schools. We're now at H.W. Good Elementary in the Yawk School District, and thanks to a generous grant from the Community Foundation Visionaries Program, we were able to go into the Westmoreland Career and Technical Center, the higher grades.
Oh, right.
And everybody thinks, well, the older kids don't really necessarily need it. Yes, they do.
Oh, right. Right.
It's not necessarily the being conscientious about the flip top cans or easy to open and things like that, but they still are very much in need. And the program was established because a lot of times these kids go to caretakers over the weekend because their parents are working or whatever the case might be, and maybe those caretakers don't have the food to be able to feed them, or if they're staying at home, maybe their parents just don't have it right now. Even though there are avenues out there, there are extenuating circumstances that we're not always aware of.
You've mentioned Feeding America, that you are a designated Feeding America food bank. Tell the listeners, what does that mean? I
think I'll turn that over to Kris. He's a little bit more eloquent with that.
Well, Feeding America is essentially our national voice for hunger, and advocacy in the U.S. There's 200 food banks, roughly 200 food banks, that make up the Feeding America network. And essentially, to be a part of the network, you have to undergo a strenuous certification process, and also agree to abide by rules and regulations that every couple of years we sign a contract with them. And essentially, as I said, they're our national voice and advocate for the less fortunate in the country. They help us secure donations on a larger scale through major corporations, and they're in Washington D.C. and on the policy level in terms of helping us keep programs intact that help support the food bank. So they're very important when it comes to that. And again, you've probably seen some of their advertising on billboards or on television. So they, again, it's just another way to help us get the word out nationally, to be a part of a network that helps support one another. That's why they exist in the first place. Food safety, that's the other
food safety,
thing. Yeah,
right.
Thing. And we support each other. I mean, we just had a terrible summer season and late fall season with hurricanes in the south, and the Feeding America food banks all banded together and sent supplies to Houston. They sent supplies down to Florida. Westmoreland County Food Bank sent a truckload of water to Fort Pierce, Florida, 40,000 pounds of truckload of water, and obviously relief in Puerto Rico as well. So
right.
Again, that network of food banks is that if it didn't exist, we wouldn't have that type of cooperation to help people in need across the country.
Right. Well, you're obviously making a difference in the community. Sometimes people overlook the fundamentals: food, air, and water, and you're providing one of the essentials. We'll close out the show by letting you tell the listeners, how do they become involved, whether it's opening up the wallet or putting on the shoes and doing some volunteering. How do they get involved, Jennifer?
Basically, to volunteer, they would just contact the food bank. Can I give the number?
Oh, yeah, sure.
724 468-8660, and ask to speak with Louise Wilhelm. She's our volunteer coordinator and food drive coordinator. So if you want to volunteer or you want to do a food drive, Louise is the person that you need to speak with, and she will help you get where you need to be, whether it's the food pantry in your local community or coming out to the food bank, one day a week or one day a month. You don't have to do heavy lifting. You could do data entry. You could help sort mail, whatever the case might be, whatever your interests are. Louise will be able to find a corner of whatever we do for you to go to. And then for donating funds, it's just as easy as going to our website. We have a very secure and a very accurate website that we're able to accept credit card donations, or just simply responding to a direct mail appeal, or sending a donation in without a direct mail appeal. We appreciate everything that comes in, like Kris said, no matter how big or how small.
Tell us what that website is.
It's www.westmorelandfoodbank.org.
There you have it. And if you want to give them a call, it's 724-468-8660. Kris Douglas and Jennifer Miller from the Westmoreland County Food Bank. Thanks for being on Westmoreland Community Connections. Join us next week, same time, same place, for another edition of Westmoreland Community Connections. Thanks for listening, everyone.
This has been Westmoreland Community Connections, a look at issues and happenings in and around Westmoreland County. Join us again next week on Classic Hits 107.1 WHJB.
Westmoreland Community Connections is a presentation of the Westmoreland Drug and Alcohol Commission.